On a morning when the day was just beginning, a silver pickup truck parked by the roadside. A man in his 50s stepped out, holding a cup of coffee, thinking about his life, about the things every man thinks about at some point. Was it worth it? Worth putting everything on the line halfway through life, the assets, the time, the energy, just to be called husband one more time? No one forced him to think that. But every morning, driving across America in his old truck, he asked himself the same question. No more family meetings. No more rushing home for dinner. No more being nagged about buying the wrong brand of detergent. Just silence. And peace. Unconditional peace. He wasn't running from anything. He just chose a different life. A life not chasing expectations, not needing to please anyone, not worrying about splitting bank accounts if things fell apart again. No more lifelong promises, but also no more risk of losing everything if it ended. This video doesn't criticize marriage, doesn't judge anyone, doesn't say men should live alone. We're just telling a story. A man who once lived the way society expected and then chose to live the way he truly wanted. That's it. And now, let's begin the first part of today's video. The reality of men over 50. In the parking lot behind an archery range near the edge of town, a man in a faded khaki jacket hangs up his wooden bow. He didn't come with a group. He's not in a club. He comes here every Saturday, around 6 a.m., when the dew still clings to his shoes and the air is quiet enough to hear the wind in the grass. No one knows his name, but people recognize him. Steady, alone. It's not isolation, it's a choice. His choice. And these choices are becoming more common. According to the latest Pew Research data, more than 28% of American men over 50 now live alone. No remarriage, no cohabitation, no legal ties after divorce or separation. Just over 30 years ago, that number was only 15%. Since 1990, the divorce rate for people aged 50 and older has doubled. This doesn't mean marriage has lost its value. It just shows that cracks in long-term relationships aren't rare anymore. But the real story isn't about divorce. It's about not going back, not remarrying, not long-term dating, not re-entering a cycle of commitment. An internal AARP study found that nearly 60% of men over 50 who had been through a divorce or serious breakup had no intention of marrying again. Not because they lacked opportunities, not because they stopped believing in connection, but because they found a different kind of peace, a sense of enough that doesn't need to be shared. From a societal perspective, this is a quiet but powerful shift. Men who once carried the weight of family responsibilities are now learning to set that role down and live more authentically without titles or molds. They haven't disappeared. They're just no longer visible in familiar roles, no longer someone's husband, no longer the dad who gets home at 6. Now, they might be the guy walking his dog before sunrise, the one hiking by the creek each evening, the man traveling solo to Colorado to see snow fall for the first time in 10 years. And they're not ashamed of it. They're living more deeply with themselves, a minimalist, independent life, not because they gave up on love, but because love is no longer the center of every decision. This mindset doesn't come from trauma, it comes from clarity. Clarity that not everyone is meant to be with someone forever. And that living alone, if done right, can be fulfilling, complete, and freer than anything else. From a small coffee shop in the Highlands, morning sunlight pours through the window onto the collar of a man writing in his notebook. The leather watch on his wrist is worn. Beside him, a steaming cup of black espresso. He scratches out a few lines, then looks out the window. Outside, young cyclists hurry past. Everyone seems in a rush, except him. He once thought marriage was the destination. Then he realized it was just one phase. Like anything else, it comes and goes. After 50, nothing needs to stay the same. No one is forcing you to marry again. No more pressure that says being coupled equals being complete. No more one-size-fits-all definitions. He doesn't avoid relationships. He just no longer uses them to validate his worth. He doesn't wear the title husband or boyfriend like a badge. Instead, he chooses softer connections, morning conversations, uncommitted walks with someone, glances that don't hide anything. Some may call him withdrawn, but he's not withdrawn. He's selective. He no longer wants to fix anyone, no longer wants to be fixed. doesn't expect anyone to fully understand him, doesn't need anyone to prove anything. His generation grew up with rules: get married, have kids, stay together forever. But real life isn't a textbook. People change, emotions change, desires change, and so did he. Now, instead of starting over with someone else, he starts over with himself, a version that doesn't need comparison, doesn't need approval, doesn't need to harmonize with anyone but his own soul. At this age, happiness is no longer a perfect wedding or a milestone anniversary. Happiness is waking up without having to play a role, not as a husband, not as someone's ideal partner, just yourself, living a simple day that feels honest. There were women after the divorce. Some were smart, some were gentle, some truly moved him. But he didn't stay, not because they weren't enough, but because he no longer wanted to invest in an old structure. Not everyone needs a legal contract to prove love. Not everyone needs to live under the same roof to feel connected. And for him, if a relationship costs freedom, peace, and safety, then no matter how beautiful it is, it's no longer a choice. Sometimes all he needs is a friend to have tea with on Sunday afternoon, a late-night message, "You doing okay today?" A presence that's gentle, without promises, without pressure. His mindset doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from experience. To know that love, without mutual respect and willingness, eventually becomes a burden. He no longer fears loneliness, because he knows loneliness isn't about having someone there. It's about being stuck in a role your heart no longer wants. From a wedding in the 1970 seconds, everyone smiling, cutting the cake, then to family parties in the 1990 seconds, kids playing in the yard, then to now, a gray-haired man walking out of a bar in Texas, holding a beer, laughing with friends. No one asks why he hasn't remarried, and that's no longer a question that matters. Marriage used to be the ultimate life goal, but for many Gen X or Boomer men, they've been through that. They built families, weathered storms, and now they ask, do I really need to do it again? Can I be happy without signing another paper, without repeating old duties? At this age, the question is no longer, who will walk with me for the rest of my life? It's become, am I truly at peace in my own home, in a mind? And if the answer is yes, even if it's a home with just one person, they no longer feel alone. Better single than sorry isn't a rebellious declaration. It's a new philosophy, that living a simple, autonomous life is better than repeating a stressful cycle just to feel like you fit a mold. More men today define happiness on their own terms. Solo RV trips through the West, weekend cooking classes out of curiosity, or peaceful Monday morning fishing while the world rushes to work. Marriage is no longer the only path to meaning or security. Some choose to live with a partner without marriage, believing legal proof isn't required for commitment. Others date freely but with boundaries, keeping connection and personal rhythm. Some build relationships solely on emotion, not societal contracts, so every moment shared is voluntary, not obligatory. This mindset brings relief. No need to perform as the perfect husband, no fear of losing freedom. Instead, flexibility. If they want solitude today, they have it. If they want a road trip with someone next week, they can. Freedom and connection are not mutually exclusive as long as both parties are clear and respectful. Across America, small communities are forming around this mindset. Midlife, single men's golf clubs, RV trip groups, local craft beer brewers, places where there's no pressure to explain your marital status, no judgment for choosing singlehood, just people living life their way. And what's important is they're not bitter, no blaming, no resentment, just calm. They've lived enough to know love and marriage aren't the same thing. Marriage can be beautiful, but it may not fit anymore. Love, if it comes, is still welcome. But now, they love without sacrificing inner peace. Back to the man in the coffee shop. He closes his notebook, takes the last sip of espresso, and stands. Outside, the sky is clear. He smiles, not because he found the perfect answer to happiness, but because he knows happiness doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be his. A fall morning. Sunlight tilts across an empty golf course. A man stands at the 7th hole, not in a hurry, just adjusting his stance. He swings. The sound of the club is crisp. The ball flies, lands perfectly. He chuckles, tapping the ground in celebration. No audience, no pressure, just pure joy in the moment. That's the beauty of single life. You don't divide your time by anyone else's schedule. If you want to golf at 6 a.m., just set the alarm. If you want to sleep in until noon, you can. No compromises, no permission, no explanations. In the afternoon, he visits a used bookstore in town, flips through a leather-bound book on the history of a place he plans to visit. The shop owner greets him. They chat. Then he's off again, a short trip to a small Colorado town, just to see the season's first snow, just to try a famous local pastry. Life feels lighter when you alone decide where to go, what to eat, how long to stay. Singlehood also simplifies finances. No shared budget stress, no debates over bills. Want a new pickup truck? Buy it. Want to invest in a small garden plot? No need to convince anyone. The decision is yours, and that brings a unique sense of control, one many men say they never had during marriage. But the beauty of single life isn't just in freedom, it's also in learning to care for yourself. Some men eat better, exercise regularly, and develop new habits like meditation or bedtime reading. Instead of feeling empty, they fill their days with exciting things: photography classes, fishing trips, learning a new recipe. To make single life meaningful, many turn to real-life communities. Not noisy online groups, but small, in-person circles, cycling clubs, chess groups at the library, garage brewers, shared interests, shared pace, shared views, relationships that ask little but offer plenty. Another key: emotional intention. Successful single men say they call friends more often, visit family on holidays, keep at least one social activity weekly. It keeps the mood up, prevents isolation. Because freedom without connection can slip into loneliness. But being single isn't the same as being lonely. Loneliness is being stuck in something you no longer want. Singlehood means you have a choice, and you choose to embrace your own space. A one-person dinner, lovingly prepared, can feel like a feast. A solo road trip can be an adventure. Now it's a quiet evening. He's watering the backyard garden. Water runs gently. A warm light glows. He smiles while picking the season's first ripe tomato. A small joy, but enough to make the day worthwhile. Living alone can be beautiful when you choose it, when you shape your life on your terms, when you savor every moment instead of letting it slip by. Then, a small farm in Nebraska. Near sunset, a silver-haired man lights a fire in his backyard. Beside him, a handmade wooden table with a few bottles of craft beer. He pours a glass, sits down. His face isn't sad or happy, just calm. This is John, 55. A man who once thought his life ended 10 years ago. John lost nearly 70% of his assets in a bitter breakup, left his home with only a few boxes and an old truck. The first night in his rental, he lay on the floor feeling like part of him died. No calls, no texts, just the ceiling fan and the thought, this is the end. Then he started from scratch. A part-time job at a local woodshop, a new habit, jogging by the lake every morning. Slowly, he saved enough to buy a small piece of land, learned to grow veggies, brew beer, fix doors. 10 years later, John had more than a house. He had a garden, loyal dogs, and weekend friends. What he regained wasn't wealth, but peace. The best thing he has now? He doesn't have to play any roles, just a man living at his own rhythm. Cut to a bar outside Phoenix. Warm lights, slow country music. Another man sips whiskey, chatting with the bartender. This is Mike, 60. He remarried once, out of fear of being alone. After his first marriage ended, he rushed into another, hoping for comfort. 2 years later, another divorce. This time, he wasn't angry, just tired. He moved to a mountain cabin. At first, it felt empty. Then, one spring morning, sipping coffee on the porch, he smiled, just because a woodpecker tapped on a tree nearby. For the first time in years, he felt present. Mike started planning solo trips, driving to small towns, tasting local food, learning new dances at bars. He stopped trying to fill the gap with relationships. Instead, he filled it with experience. Now, both John and Mike don't fear the past. They don't chase marriage as an endpoint. They cherish quiet, freedom, and small joys they used to overlook. They can still love, still open up, but without giving up inner calm. Two stories, two paths, one truth. Sometimes standing alone isn't the end, it's a new beginning, where a man doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, just live a life he feels proud of. Golden light spills through a small cafe window. The man steps onto the porch, sets his coffee down, takes a deep breath. Traffic fades. Only the rustle of leaves remains. He smiles. A quiet smile, just enough to know he is at peace. Choosing singlehood after 50 isn't the end. It's not escape, not surrender. It's a choice filled with dignity and clarity to protect peace of mind and live the rest of life the way you want. You can love, you can open your heart, but you don't have to be bound. No one gets to define your happiness. No one has the right to judge the choice that brings you peace. What about you? Are you ready to believe in love again, or will you choose your own path of freedom? Take a minute to think about that. And if you feel like sharing, leave your story in the comments. This channel was created to talk about the things men rarely say aloud about life after 40, about love, loss, and finding yourself again. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and turn on notifications. This will be a space for deep, real, calm conversations, just the way you want to live the rest of your life. The screen fades to black, one last light on his face. The voice slows, warm, like a gentle handshake. Everyone has their own path, and if yours is singlehood, walk it with pride. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit subscribe, leave your story in the comments, and share the video. Thanks for watching until the end. See you in the next video.